Today we are looking at a case from the second half of the 19th century. So sit back as we travel to the United States of America, to the state of Ohio, where a story of hardship, obsession, and fatal consequence slowly unfolded over the course of several difficult years. Mary Kelly was born in 1854. Her early life was shaped by loss almost from the very beginning. Her mother died while she was still a young child, and her father, unable to care for her, was placed in a soldier's home in Dayton. As a result, Mary went to live with her uncle and aunt. They were caring people who took their responsibilities seriously. They ensured that she received a proper education and gave her every opportunity to grow into a capable and confident young woman. By the time she was 16 years old, those who knew her described her as a young lady of pleasing appearance and intelligent manner. Her prospects seemed favorable, and there was every reason to believe that she might settle into a comfortable and respectable life. However, that path did not unfold as expected. Under the persuasion of her uncle, Mary entered into a marriage with a man named David Lawson. What may have appeared to be a reasonable match on the surface turned out to be deeply damaging. Lawson was, by all accounts, a drunken and irresponsible man whose behavior made daily life increasingly difficult to endure. What Mary had tried to manage with patience gradually became intolerable, and she found relief only when he was sent to prison. The couple had one child together, but the baby did not survive, and that loss added another layer of grief to what was already a troubled and unhappy marriage. By 1873, Mary had moved to the city of Columbus in Ohio and found employment in domestic service. It was not an easy life, but it was hers, and she was doing her best to rebuild it on solid ground. A year later, in 1874, she met a man named Charles Armigel. Charles was born on the 11th of May, 1850, in Athens, Ohio. He was one of 9 children and had received a reasonable education, even attending Ohio University for a period of time. His studies, however, were cut short when his father passed away, leaving him with no choice but to leave and find work in order to help support his mother, a woman who was widely regarded by those who knew her as thoroughly respectable. He made his way to Columbus, where he learned the trade of wood finishing, eventually married, and became a father. At the time, those around him considered him to be a fine and industrious man living a decent and respectable life. That reputation did not hold. One afternoon, Charles was out with a friend named Elliot Heimrod when 2 young women passed them on the street. Heimrod suggested they follow them. Charles agreed. It was a careless, thoughtless decision, the kind a man makes without truly considering its weight. But it carried consequences he could never have anticipated. One of those 2 women was Mary Kelly, and Charles became infatuated with her almost immediately. His feelings for Mary grew quickly and powerfully, until everything else in his life began to feel like a burden: his home, his wife, his child. He walked away from all of it. He persuaded Mary to leave her position in domestic service and travel with him, first to Toledo and then to Cleveland. Though they were not married, they presented themselves to the world as husband and wife. The life they built together was far from the one Charles had imagined. Work proved difficult to find in both cities, money ran out, and there were days when they had very little to eat. The circumstances they found themselves in were desperate, and in the absence of any other means of support, Mary turned to prostitution in order for them to survive. Charles came to rely on what she earned. It was an arrangement born entirely out of necessity, but it placed an enormous strain on their relationship. It was a source of shame to him and of hardship to her, and over time it became the root of a deep and growing tension between them. Eventually, after a serious quarrel, Mary left. She did not tell Charles where she was going, and just like that, she was gone. Charles returned to his mother's home in Athens, but he could not settle there. Mary occupied his thoughts completely. He wrote letters to Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Columbus, trying to trace her whereabouts. Every letter came back unanswered. Convinced that she was somewhere in Cleveland, he borrowed money from his mother and traveled there himself, spending 4 weeks searching the city for her face. Then one morning, outside a post office, he spotted her. He followed her at a distance along Broadway, near the Central Markets. When he finally approached her and asked how she had been, Mary did not want to speak with him. She stepped into a nearby saloon to get away from him. Charles followed her inside, and after some persuasion, she agreed to speak with him quietly in a corner of the room. The conversation did not remain quiet for long. They argued, first about the letters that had gone unanswered, then about the way Charles had treated her, including the fact that he had revealed details of her past to members of her family. The argument grew loud enough that the proprietor of the saloon stepped in and warned them both to lower their voices.